Welcome to the latest edition of Up the Pilgrims, Season 2, Episode 3. I am Damien and I am joined once again by David and Tom. And if you want to use somebody, use us and listen to Up the Pilgrims, available on all platforms. We are officially more pleasant to listen to than the Kings of Leon, at least according to Scott Burrell. Thank you, Scott, for your kind comments. And we are also joined with a special guest this week. You would have heard him down at the Jakeman's Community Stadium. You might have read his stats in the official programme, or you might have read his clips in the non-league newspaper. We have Christian James. Hello, Christian. How are you doing?
Yeah, not bad. Nice to see you all. And looking forward to this. Nice to join you.
Yeah. No problem. So we're going to have a start by talking to you, having a chat with you about sort of all the different bits and pieces that you do on behalf of Boston United, if that's okay. And then later on, we're going to have a little chat about the season so far in the National League. So obviously, as well as working out many stats and being the stadium announcer at Boston United, how long have you actually been a supporter of Boston?
As long as I can remember. So the first game I went to, I was told I was at games when I was a baby. The first game I'd have any chance of remembering would be about 2006, when I would have been 5. So kind of later Football League years onwards. As long as I can remember, been to most home games for the last sort of 10, 15 years now. And then started to get the chance to go to more away games in the last couple of years before COVID, really. So, seen plenty.
And have you got another team in another league, say in the Prem, or is Boston your one and only team?
Just Boston, really. As a lad, especially, I would follow Liverpool as well. I've got family ties to Liverpool Football Club, but it's that connection, really. You know, the fact that it's on the end of your fingertips, that the club is accessible. I'd find it difficult to say I supported Liverpool in that same way at all, really.
Of course, yeah. I think Steaders, you just Boston, aren't you?
Yeah, nobody else. Yeah.
And David?
Yeah, I'm a bit of a rogue one. Fulham and Boston for me. Bit of a weird combination, but it enables me to get to all the Premier League grounds. I sort of became a bit honorary, when I started trying to do a bit of ground hopping here and there. So, but that's around Boston. Boston's my main priority.
Yeah, and I won't mention that I'm a Spurs fan as well, but we'll kind of gloss over that one for the time being. But I mean, you are the man with all the stats, and one I saw actually last week before the Forest Green game was that Forest Green are the first Rovers to play Boston since 2007. Then there was a list of other Rovers that have played going back as far as 1938. Where do you find these stats, and how long does it take you to calculate it all?
So the collection of data, if you like, that's been an ongoing thing for a little while now. It was a project I could really pick up during COVID. The fact that I had free time, the chance really to, some might say waste, I'd say to tactfully employ on collecting a lot of this data. But the key with it is because it's all formatted through Excel. In a weird and wonderful system, but one that I work and makes sense to me. I am able to kind of draw a lot of information out of it very quickly. So it does mean that what looks like quite a niche statistic or a niche thing to find, the actual finding it isn't too difficult now because the information's all there. It's just a case of adding to it, obviously, as fixtures come up, keeping head-to-head records updated, player records, that sort of thing. It's not too difficult now, is what I'm trying to say. Putting it together was hard work. It was really hard work. I've reformatted it loads and loads of times. Keep adding different things. I see things that other people do at other clubs and think, yeah, could we do that? Yes, we probably could. Is there an audience for it? Well, people seem to keep reading the stuff I put out there. So, in short, it was a lot of work to begin with, but it's now in a way that it keeps things light and breezy for me, which is good.
Yeah, I mean, I can imagine, obviously, every game there's a new stat going to sort of come up, isn't there? And you're going to have to update it, I guess. And, one new stat, maybe a player makes another appearance or another goal or whatever. So I can imagine it can be hard work, but gets easier as you go on. So I'm going to put you on the spot now. What is the best stat for Boston United you have found, or what is your favourite stat?
Right, my favourite stat. I really enjoyed, and it's incredibly niche, but it's one where the account wasn't particularly there weren't too many people interacting with it at the time, and that was before the Rochdale FA Cup game, 2019. I'd done the account for 2 or 3 years, more basic stuff than what I would do now, and I'd done the programme just for a year at that point, so it was really still quite new. And I had quite a look at how Boston had done in results after general elections, and this seemed to really take off. We were desperately looking for omens for that Rochdale replay. And I found that Boston had never lost in a game after a general election, and that's another one where it's just a case of marrying up dates. Really, it's not the most difficult stat. I've done a lot of work on graphs and stats and things before, and then they don't get any interest whatsoever. It could sometimes be the more simple stuff, or what takes less work is what lands best. And that one always sticks out to me as one that was just a bit silly, really. But everyone really seemed to jump on it. Obviously didn't ring true. We lost the game. But I really enjoyed that one. I think that's the lesson in a lot of it. You say about noticing when players are coming up towards milestones and that sort of thing. It's that identifying patterns, identifying trends. I thought last night on the way back, and maybe this is how my brain works, but I think that a lot of football fans are quite like this. You do notice things. I noticed with the early goal yesterday. I thought to myself, crikey, I can't remember too many times recently that Boston have come from conceding the first goal to win a game. And equally, then I thought, well, actually, I can't remember us losing many games when we've scored first. So that prompts you just to have a look to see when that last happened. Sometimes you go, oh, I forgot about one in March, and then that's really boring. Or sometimes you think, no, actually, that is something that's worth sharing. So, that one led me to realise that the first goal scorer hasn't lost a Boston game since October, with one exception, and that's the playoff final. So that's quite a recent example of how things can develop, really, if that makes sense. You spot a little trend. I've got the data there that can either back it up or doesn't. It either falls by the wayside or you can fire it out there. And I'm lucky now that I've got an audience that interacts with me and asks questions quite a lot. So that helps me come up with things, because it's put on the plate for me if someone asks a question. And it tends to be that when people put stuff forward to me, that stuff's a lot more interesting than just the things I come up with.
I do remember, I think it was reading last week that before Saturday we hadn't lost to Forest Green Rovers. I did read that, I think, and I'm thinking, oh no, I was hopeful before the game, and obviously now that's gone on the wayside. So yeah, we have to move on now with that one, unfortunately. But is looking at stats something you've always enjoyed doing, and how do they make you feel before a game? For example, say we've lost the last 4 out of 5 games, and you've got a stat about that. Does it make you more tense before a game?
I think some things, like, for example, how we've got on against the same club going back years, when clearly the players have changed, the managers changed, etc. You like to think that these things don't have an impact, but I think as supporters, especially if you're going away from home, if you're visiting somewhere you've never seen your team do well, it does put you on edge that little bit more. And again, that's probably a feeling that a lot of people have. It's just that you can attribute numbers to these things. So in terms of the stats, I've always been quite statistically minded. I've always enjoyed looking at numbers. Working with numbers at school was something I was always very good at. I've always enjoyed putting stuff into charts and graphs and seeing if there's patterns to things. It's never trying to find a solution for something, or quite often it's not. The answer isn't, well, we lost to them in the 1960s, so we're clearly going to lose again. It's just interesting. But numbers is something that I work well with. I enjoy using data. I use data professionally, and the two kind of dovetail quite nicely, because I can have a play about with the Boston stuff, and then I can use that at work, or I can then I can have a play about. I think it's just going to be a tweet, and then actually I can use it in something else. So no, it's all good fun. Numbers are what does make me tick. As well as football, I really enjoy cricket, and that is a game that is full of numbers. The whole thing is numbers, really. And that's great, and that's an ever-evolving picture with numbers. So, it's perhaps no surprise. It's something I've always enjoyed, really.
And have you got a good stat for Saturday against Tamworth that you could share with us?
Oh, so Boston have never ever started a season with 4 league defeats. It's never happened. We've had some pretty terrible teams in the past. Some teams that have really struggled. No Boston team has ever lost the first 4 games of the season, so there's hope there. And the last time they came closest was 2016. We lost the first 3. Game 4 at home to Tamworth, 1-3-0. So there's your blast from the past if you want some inspiration for this time around. I don't think the answer's to sign Lamin Colley. He scored 2 that night, wasn't the best forward in the world. So we'll maybe just leave it as the fact we're playing Tamworth. But yeah, there's one. There's always a good and a bad to be found. That's the thing with numbers. You can nudge them about however which way you like, really. But yeah, we'll stick with that.
Keep your fingers crossed for that one, for sure. Another job you've taken over the past couple of years is the stadium announcer after obviously the sad passing of Mick Fixter, who was the voice of Boston United, which seemed forever, really. I bet you must have been really honoured to be asked to become the new stadium announcer for the club.
It's a huge privilege. It's something that, well, first of all, we obviously didn't expect to lose Mick. It was assumed that he would carry on as long as he was enjoying it, as long as he was happy, and he really did enjoy it. He loved doing that job. The whole thing was, of course, so sudden. Then, yeah, the question was put to me. Craig Singleton did a couple of the games. Seb Noble, that used to cover when Mick was unavailable, he came and did a couple that autumn. And then the question was put to me, did I want to give it a go? And I thought, well, I'm in the press box anyway. As it went, we had a couple of Tuesday nights, so there was no non-league paper duty for the first 2. I thought, well, I'll see how it goes. It's not something I necessarily thought I'd be very confident on. And looking back on it, I watched the highlights of those couple of games, and it does make me cringe. It was very much learning on the job. But again, if we'd have had the benefit of if we'd have been lucky enough to see Mick retire instead of pass away, we'd have had the chance for someone to have been trained on it. So it was a case of learning on the job. People were very patient with me, gave me advice, and people weren't afraid to kind of tell me where they thought I could improve, which was really handy as well. Because as much as you think you're doing a good job, you don't know how it's received, and it's not always easy to self-reflect. So no, it's a huge honour. You're quite right. It's an absolute privilege. I never lose. I haven't yet. I mean, this is the 3rd season now. I've never felt like it's mine, really. I've always felt that it's. It seems really silly to say. It feels like I'm doing the job and kind of tiding it over, but it is Mick's position, really. It's all a much longer generation than just me has known it. It's Mick's job. I don't know, one day if I carry on doing it and people feel I'm doing a good job, then that's great. But I don't think any of us can honestly say we'd rather I be doing it than Mick. I'd much rather Mick was here doing it. That said, I do really enjoy it, and it's something that I have taken a lot of pride in.
And is there much prep work that goes into it? Like, do you have to choose the music? And obviously, is it hard to try and rally the fans?
It can be hard. That first year was difficult. I was lucky. My first 3 were all wins. It was just after. So we lost Mick pretty much as Ian Culverhouse came in. Craig and Seb got the Baseford FA Cup defeat, losing to Chester and losing to Hereford at home. So I mean, they would have been a really poor start. And then I got the home wins on the Tuesday nights against Alfreton and Kidderminster. So it was a good start. We then beat Blythe as well. I did. It's funny. You get some days that as fans you don't necessarily think about it, but my 3rd one was Remembrance Day, and that was quite big for me. I was quite nervous about that. Reading the last post, of course, and yeah, I do the music as well. So there's a chap, Chris, that helps me on match day. So he does all the sliders and presses all the buttons for me. He selects music off the playlist, but I set the playlist up in the week. The club send me birthdays and that sort of thing. And then the rest of it, really, I created a script. I never thought I'd be any good at kind of trying to come up with stuff on the spot. So I do have a script of the stuff that is going to come up. Just written out in words. Welcome to the Japeman Stadium for today's game between. If it's there, it's easy. Yeah. So on match day itself, I do have help. Every Saturday, Chris helps me, and then Tuesday nights, thankfully, I've not got the paper, so I can sort of manage on my own, really. But yeah, it would have been an impossible job to do on your own, especially now the club have got us doing 50-50s in front of the tunnel at half time, etc. It's kind of become a bit of a roaming role. Yeah, it does take a bit of prep, but it's good fun. And if I didn't do the prep, I'd feel really exposed.
And how hard is it to try and you're going to have to try and look obviously at the opposing team and some of the names that come up. I mean, obviously Stedders and David obviously doing Endeavour FM coverage, and I used to obviously do the commentary as well. And sometimes when you look down on the team sheet and you see some of them names, and it's like, how am I going to pronounce that? I mean, how do you get by it?
You ask questions. Hopefully, you've noticed at about 2:00, and there's another media person about from the club. Rochdale had Taran Alarakia first week of the season, and I was able to ask them, so that was nice and easy. If in doubt, you make it up. I'll be honest with you. There's no kind of safety net if there's nobody to ask, and it's not obvious. You make it up, and they hope they don't score. I remember Carlton Bezoonu came down with Chorley last season. There was nobody free to ask. I know how to say it now, but I certainly didn't know how to say it at the time. And then he scored the last minute equaliser. So you get what you get sometimes. Yeah, you just have to kind of fake it till you make it, really, and hope that the people that need the information know who you're on about. Because, there's some names about. And, of course, this year it's a league that I'm not so familiar with either. So you've not got that basis of players. You know, people like Shetmer and Bedsy, for example, at Brackley, and because we had him every year, you knew how to say it. Whereas if I encountered him the first time, I'd be a bit worried. But yeah, no, you do have to make it up sometimes or hope for the best. And yeah, I'm sure we go to away games and hear announcers get it wrong sometimes. I still laugh at it. I just have every sympathy now.
Of course. Got a fan question now as well. Someone actually asked me when they found out you were going to be on here. Someone actually asked me last week, when reading out the teams, you sound quite excited when reading the Boston United team, but not so much when you're reading the opposition. I mean, is there a reason for that? Or?
I think I just try and give us a bit of an edge, really. Especially with 7 substitutes now. It is genuinely a concern that you don't get through the whole thing before kick-off. So when they're out the tunnel, you wait for them to line up. The music does its thing. The players are never out on time, so you can never kind of time these things very well. But then actually to get 18 names in twice, just while the coin toss is going on, I do worry one day I'm still going to be going. So yeah, I just try and rattle through the away as quick as possible. Team sheet raffles available if people need the teams in a manner that they can sit and digest. Obviously Twitter, etc. is there as well, and we do read them out before. I do try and read them out a bit steadier, usually about 2:30, and then again at 2:50. So if people are making notes on the programme, etc., I used to be the same. I'd sit there and I'd want to write the changes into the programme. That service, if you like, is there for people before kick-off.
Yeah.
I'm never going to just read Boston out. Some clubs do that. I always do read both teams out. But yeah, we'll get the opposition out of the way. We'll try and stir Boston up a little bit, and then I'll kind of just leave it to the supporters, and obviously leave it to the players as well.
Of course, and the supporters have been doing a great job, especially over the last few games, which is good to see. So, I've got a controversial question for you now. When the Pilgrims scored starting last season, Samba de Janeiro was played over the tannoy. In my opinion, I actually thought it was a good idea, and I think it got the crowd going. But I mean, we've seen on social media, it's definitely a mixed reaction. I don't know what David and Stedders, what you guys think about it, but I think it's a great idea. I mean, whose idea was it, and is it going to be a permanent thing? Is that what's going to happen this season when a goal's scored? Because obviously we haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, so it's set, it's ready. It's been ready for 3 hours already at home this season. I can't remember if we used it. Did we use it one of the pre-season friendlies? We maybe did.
We did.
The thing with it is there is a practical element to it, and that is that the music box is inside. For those that have been around the JCS or are familiar, you go through the control room. You go up from the press box through the control room, and then the announcer's room is in there. And it just sits on a phone. It's a little audio file. It's ready to go. The music's always turned up. It's just nobody's pressed play. So it's there ready to go. Now, the issue is that if I'm on my own, I can't get there and then know when to read out the goal scorer because there's no sense of the atmosphere in there. So for the pre-season friendlies, I've not been able to do it myself. Chris was there for one of them, and he certainly does all the Saturdays. The Tuesdays, we kind of just work it out as we go along. In terms of where it came from, it was a conversation with Joe Simpson, actually. So he messaged me before the start of last season. We changed the walkout music as well. So we've got the 3 songs before kickoff now. There's 3 for afternoon games. The second one changes in midweek. We have all of the lights in midweek, whereas we have Kasabian on the Saturday. After I can't remember what it's called now. The first one we have from Kill Bill. So the management and the players came up with that last season. The 3, Fatboy Slim being the walkout music, and the goal music as well. Because I had we'd had the old one at York Street for a long time, the Fanfare. It had been changed to Palladio, which is the one that Fulham have actually as well. Second mention for Fulham today. And when I'd taken it on and we'd been struggling that year with Ian coming in, etc., I changed it back to the Fanfare. And that was when we then beat Darlington and we kind of went on that run towards safety that season. So we had changed it back to the traditional one. But it was a bit slow and ponderous. And that's my words, not Joe's, just to clarify. But Joe came to me at the start of last season and said, look, this is something that we want to put forward. Are you happy to do it? And so that's what we've done. So, the goal music has very much come from the club, come from the players and the management. It is ready to go this year. Listen, if we're 4-0 down and we score in the last minute, I might can it. But if we're close to a game and it's not going to look silly, we don't want to embarrass ourselves.
No.
All being well, when we score first on Saturday, Bellini will be there. Don't worry.
Definitely. And I don't know if it was your choice on Saturday, but it was a good choice at half time. The first song, Don't Stop Believing, as well. I thought that was quite apt, actually. I did notice that.
I try and have a bit of fun. I got very lightly booed when I played Hot, Hot, Hot against Banbury the first year, and it was -4, and the pitch had frozen at half time. I do try and have a bit of tongue-in-cheek humour with it. It's I'm pleased people notice, because I do mess about sometimes.
Yeah, no, that is definitely something I noticed. But I mean, you are, of course, a man with many talents, obviously sorting the stats out, your stadium announcing on a game. And as we've already briefly mentioned, you write for the non-league newspaper. How did that come about?
So that was kind of my in, if you like, really, with the club. That was the first thing I did. I looked at writing as something that I really enjoyed at school. I then approached the club when I was in sixth form at the grammar school in Horncastle to see if there's anything I could do as a work experience thing. We in sixth form, alongside your A-levels, you had to do some form of extended project or work experience. So I spoke to the club, and Craig said to us about doing a programme column. So that's what I did. And it was Craig's dad, Rob Singleton, that did the non-league paper for a long time, and he was looking to hand it over. So at the end of that season, I was asked if I'd like to shadow him for a couple of games in March, and then I did the April reports. And again, it's something I really enjoyed. So I stumbled upon it, to be honest with you. I'd never done anything like it before. The deadlines felt especially tight at the time. We do print on the Saturday night because it's in the shops on the Sunday. So that kind of fell into my lap a little bit. I'd done about 15 sets of programme notes, and then suddenly I was invited up to the press box and got the opportunity to do that. But no, it's a great organisation, and the fact that they get so much information out on a Sunday morning is a ridiculous effort of logistics. We've had a few hiccups from time to time, late kickoffs and games that have gone on a long time. I remember there was one occasion that they printed the wrong report in the wrong club. But by and large, they do a very good job, and I do enjoy doing them. And this season, we've got enhanced coverage. So, whereas for people that read it, last year there'll be one star game in the centre and then little reports for the other 11 in the National League North. Everyone gets a 450-worder this year with interviews from one or two of the management. So there's more work for me to do post kickoff. I'm pretty much the last one out now, but post full time, sorry. I'm pretty much the last to leave now, but for Pilgrims fans, there's a lot more coverage there this year, which is great. But no, it's all volunteers. Everyone has a home club that they cover, so that obviously covers every game. A real wide group of people that contribute, but something that I've been able to learn on the job, which has been great. And that's what non-league's about, isn't it? People want to try new things, and there's space there, and people are understanding and helpful to you along the way. And I've had a lot of help from Rob Singleton, from Craig, and from Duncan Brown when he was working at the Standard at the time. He had some really good advice for me as well. And yeah, we did 2 years at York Street, and then it was my ticket, if you like, really, when we were behind closed doors. So that was a real privilege as well. to be there for that and to cover that for the non-league paper when not many people got to attend was something special and something I've always been grateful for as well.
Oh, I can imagine. It must have been a weird atmosphere, though, in there without any fans. Probably like a reserve game, I guess, maybe. But, I mean, what is the deadline? Because you said, obviously, you're there, one of the last to leave in an evening. I mean, what is the deadline on a Saturday? Because after the game, I mean, obviously, you've got to concentrate on the game as well as doing the stadium announcing. And then, obviously, you've got to see what's going on in the game to then write about it after. I mean, what is the deadline for you to get the report over to the non-league paper?
So they like to have all the key information. So not the report, basically everything else. So the player ratings, attendance, referee, obviously half-time, full-time, and the goal times, etc. They like all of that by 6 o'clock. So that's in quite a set format. You just email that across, but that has to be in before 6 o'clock, so they can effectively start publishing those later pages, and they can think about headlines and things like that. The only thing that I don't write is the headline. That's done by the editor. And then they do like to have the full report by 7, which is a bit tight. Obviously, you get it done while you're there, really. The added complication this year, and it has made it a little bit more difficult, is that they do like to have quotes from at least one manager as well. Whereas before, I could just crack on, really. So by full time, we play Sweet Caroline or the Final Countdown, and then the music comes off, and I would just write last year. Whereas this year, with waiting for quotes, and I should probably start writing and then go and wait for quotes, but we haven't seen Ian until 5:45, 10:50 on both occasions. There've obviously been plenty to discuss in the changing room. So it's been myself and Rob Makepeace losing about 3/4 of an hour to then have to write it starting at 6 o'clock. So yeah, it is a challenge. There's always that juggle between accuracy and not taking forever. And there's not the opportunity to go home and kind of pour over it. So you do learn to get on with it. I've never got close to the 7 o'clock. And the only occasion that did happen was, again, behind closed doors. The Gateshead playoff game was a 5:30 kickoff, and it then finished 5-3. And we were at the stage of that one where I got the report pretty much written. It was 5-2, and then Gateshead scored. And I thought, well, if this goes to penalties, I'm stuffed, really. Thankfully, it didn't. Thankfully for Boston, and thankfully for me. And obviously Boston much more important. But yeah, no, so it meant I could send that off. And then in terms of getting comments from the management, I was pretty much ringing the office saying, I'll put Craig on the line, but we finished 5 minutes ago. And they're saying, well, we printed the first 6 pages and you're number 7. So we were pretty much holding the press up that day. But yeah, they're very understanding. If you need more time, they'll give you it. They just need 95% of people to be done by 7 o'clock. Because, yeah, by 8 o'clock in the morning, if you know where to go, you should be able to find a copy in any town in the country, really, which is quite an effort.
And I mean, you were just saying as well that you speak like to Rob Makepeace as well. I mean, does he help you, say, for example, if you have you missed something like a major thing in the game that maybe you needed to report on? And, you know, do others there help you out in case you do miss it, or?
Yeah, absolutely. There's a nice little group. So again, when I started at York Street, there was behind the goal there was the announcers box, and then there were 2 long benches. So you would sit in a line. So it used to be Duncan Brown, John Blackwell, Craig Singleton, myself, usually Rob Singleton as well. So there'd be a group of you there. The radio on the halfway line in the main stand, unusually, but everyone else was there, and you would kind of be able to trade off on ideas, and you would discuss where you think things went wrong. Because that's the thing as well. It's not just the nuts and bolts. You try and paint a story of the game, and sometimes the way that I've seen a game has been won and lost and progressed is completely different to anybody else. Nowadays, there's still Craig and Rob. You obviously can't discuss the game with them while it's going on, with them being live on the radio. Rob or anybody else, of course, from Radio Links. There's a couple of the guys that do the data for the live score services. So they send a couple of people. They're usually the same 2 or 3 chaps that they're good to have a chat to. And then there's obviously the other radio with yourselves just along the way there. So, yeah, you can have a bit of a chat. Half an hour waiting for Ian with Rob, we kind of poured over a few thoughts about the last couple of games, which is nice as well. But, yeah, by the end of doing it for a few years, you've got to know everyone, and you feel you can have quite an honest discussion with them about how you think things have gone. And yeah, it probably does lead into my report sometimes. So you listen to what they have to say, You obviously hear the questions that the radio have asked the management, and then you can maybe tailor how you approach things to that as well. The radio guys, Rob, who we've had twice so far this season, he obviously knows a lot more what he's doing than I do with things. He's a proper journalist. So, yeah, you always want to kind of be that sponge and absorb the way other people do it. And there's also the practicalities of it as well. So if you've got to interview both managers, if they come out and start talking to the press at the same time, you do have to ask a favour. And Rochdale were very good at that. I was speaking to Ian when their manager came out on the opening day of the season, and they were happy enough to send me the audio clip that they were going to be putting out sort of 8-9 o'clock that night. So you do ask for some help and consideration. And again, it's non-league, isn't it? People will give it. If you're reasonable with them and you explain why you need it, people will give you help and support. And you do have to rely on that sometimes.
And what advice would you give for an aspiring journalist looking to break into sports journalism, particularly non-league football?
I would say I've probably crafted a bit of a niche for myself on the social media side of things, and that's driven everything else. But I would say that there are always opportunities there if you're willing to give time and to listen to feedback. I think if you listen to people that have been around the game for a long time, they'll tell you what people's expectations are. It's not a case of just having to do things the old way. I think there's space for youth or for new people to come in and have new ideas and new ways of doing things. But I think you have to absorb a lot. There's a lot of old heads around, there's a lot of people that are good at what they do. There's a lot of local clubs, anywhere in the country. There's a lot of clubs that play at a good level. You look at the stuff that the United Counties League clubs are putting out now in this league. It's professional stuff, and there are opportunities there, and clubs are willing to accept someone to give them a chance always. If you've got something that you feel you're good at or you feel that you enjoy, ask the question of your local non-league team, can I help out with this? If they say no, ask another one. There are clubs out there that will be grateful and willing for your time, regardless of what experience you've got. And if you conduct yourself well, and if you absorb the information that's available to you, you'll find that there's opportunities there. Like I said, I kind of leapfrogged from just doing the programme to then doing the non-league paper, to then getting involved in the radio a little bit and then a full-time podcast and stuff as well. None of that's planned. You don't sit there and go, this is what I'm going to do, but you take opportunities when they come along, and you get involved with things when people give you the chance. So yeah, I'd just say speak to your local non-league side, tell them what it is you feel you're good at or what you feel that you'd like to work on, and just be useful. Give your time, be useful to people, and see what you absorb along the way.
That's a good answer. And as I say, like you say, hopefully we've got some good journalists coming up through the ranks, and we'll eventually be coming to Boston United. How do you feel about the future of Boston, sort of looking at the next 5 to 10 years? Do you think they've got a good future ahead of them?
I think you have to be massively optimistic. I mean, my experience of supporting Boston has very much been the rebuilding process after the Football League, after the financial issues, etc. As I said, February 2006 was my first game. So barring that 18 months when I was kind of 5, 6, 7, just enjoying football, I've kind of grown into football and grown aware of the club as a structure and the way the game works through this rebuilding process. And I think you've got to say there are enough basket case clubs around to realise that we've got good ownership that cares, that isn't going anywhere. We've got the stadium, and with any luck, within the next 5 to 10 years, as you've outlaid, there should definitely be that fourth stand on there, with this levelling up money secured. So I think you have to be positive that structurally the club isn't going anywhere. Now, where it is on the field is the difficulty. We've obviously made that step this year, and I'm sure we'll discuss in a good length about what a tough start it's been. I don't see why, even if it doesn't work out this time, the club can't establish itself at the National League in the next 10 years. I see that as a possibility, with the off-field stability of the ground, of the ownership. There will come a day, and God forbid it's any time soon, but there'll come a day when David and Neil and Chris, etc., are ready to pass it on to somebody. But you've got to have every faith that the person that they pass the baton on to will be a good faith actor, will be somebody that sees the club like they do. So you've got to say Boston have got as good a chance as anybody of being a steady ship financially, in terms of its reputation. You're relying on football beyond that, really, aren't you? Which is the difficulty. But yeah, I don't see why we're not a top non-league club for the next 5 or 10 years. And let's be honest, off the field, we've been a top non-league club for the last 5 or 10 anyway.
Yeah, I have to agree with you. I mean, I was down at Boston earlier on today and went in the car park, absolutely full. There was a match going on or some training going on the AstroTurf. Ellanders seemed quite busy, quite a few people in there, and yeah, very social, social aspect of it is very good, and it can only, like you say, get better once the fourth stand gets built and some of the amenities in there finish. So thank you very much, Christian, for your time today, but please stay with us. We are going to talk more about Boston and their first 3 games so far. And we're going to start off with the first game in the National League against Rochdale. And Stedders, do you want to start off about that game, the 3-0 defeat to Rochdale?
Yeah, it was a start, weren't it, of the 3 that we're going to speak about, and there'll be some similarities probably in some of these things we comment about these games, and some things that are completely not. Yeah, to be honest with you, it was a pretty decent draw, I thought, for the first game. I thought that would be a good tester to start us off with. Obviously, they've got very high credentials. They brought a good away support, didn't they? But on the day itself, yeah, we just fell a bit short, didn't we, in terms of I think you've got to take into account how long it's taken us to get to where we are, though. That's the point. It's 17 years and counting, if Christian doesn't want to correct me, since we've been in this level. So some fans weren't even born then, so you've got to take it into account what it is, where we were, the level of the opponent. Yeah, I think as a day in a whole, it was a fantastic day, weren't it? The sun was shining. We got all the attributes we want. We've got a big home crowd. I'm sure Christian again will tell us the roar before the first kickoff was massive. I couldn't believe it. The chanting during the songs pre, the ones that Christian again plays to build up the atmosphere. It was so loud. I could hear it because I was commentating that day, and it was coming through the microphone loud and clear. You could hear it all. And that hasn't happened many times down in JCS recently, obviously. But I'm sure it will do in times to come. But yeah, that day on the field itself, like you say, didn't they? And we'll chat about it over the next 3 games as well. But we're only 3 games into a 46-game season, so we can't read too much into these first few knock-ins for my liking. But yeah, it was a 3-0 victory for the visitors on that day, and like I said, they took all 3 points home, which they deserved.
David,
yeah,
what was your take?
Like Tom touched on, I think it was probably a perfect day and a perfect example of we're back effectively off the field. Big home crowd, lots of people there, positive atmosphere before kickoff. Obviously, on the pitch it didn't go very well, but like Tom said before, you just have to take into fact where we were before this and how long it's taken us. We were all we were just grateful that day. I feel that even though the result, the time it took us to get back there, and it's just amazing to see that many people at another Boston United game at home back in the National League. It was a great atmosphere, obviously, from the town end and the away fans. Obviously, that's more money coming back into the club, which hopefully will be reinvested. But yeah, I just thought it was a stellar day all round, except from the on the field performances, which was a bit dull, I have to say. There's levels to the game, and I think in the first 3 we've definitely been found out a bit. Touching on, I know I'm jumping a bit forward, but Southend last night, they were probably the best out of 3 that we've seen so far. Just knocked it about us. I don't think the management team got it right. Sorry, last night. And they had so much freedom. Going back though to the Rochdale game, 3 moments really. The first goal, it was all boiled down to mistakes really, and that's the difference in between the National League North and the National League. We make mistakes, we pick the ball out of the net. That's what the management team say, and I heavily agree with what they're saying. It's a cool league, and I think we might be in for a long one if we don't iron out these mistakes.
And of course, Christian actually pointed out that you, David, actually got the score right. In the last podcast, you did actually mention that we might lose 3-0.
Something that I didn't want to be doing, obviously, but no matter how much I make a fool of myself on here saying that I don't want something to happen, it almost always happens, which is really frustrating in that sense. But sometimes when I feel positive, I can predict something positively, and it's good. It's good when I do that. It feels good.
You need to buy the lottery ticket.
Yeah, not the legal age yet, David.
What was it like, Christian? Like for the first game of the season, building up. There must have been excitement sort of behind the scenes, and the first game in the National League, and then obviously conceding 3 goals and losing. I mean, was there disappointment, sort of in the background and all that up that way?
Yeah, I think it was obviously there was excitement before the game. I think when the fixtures came out, we were all particularly pleased it was at home. There was a chance to kind of host our own party, if you know what I mean. As much as if you'd have gone away, especially if you'd gone away to a club that wasn't too far away, say you'd have gone away to Oldham or to Rochdale, you'd have had that big away party atmosphere. We'd have taken a good number. But to have it at Boston, especially when all of the promotion stuff happened away, to have a home game, to get everyone that wanted to be there could be there, and you saw that in the attendance. And of course, the attendance did drop down a little bit for the Forest Green game. So it was the case of anyone that is going to be at a game this season, I just said pretty much was making sure they were at that Rochdale game. So that was fantastic. I was really looking forward again to doing the PA for it. You're right about the attendance, the atmosphere. Sorry, you touched on before kickoff. There was almost a case of I don't kind of want to overawe that. I'd almost rather just sit here and let that build itself. You deliver your message and you get out of the way as soon as possible, because there was a good noise. I think after the Rochdale game, I think there was disappointment. I think we all realised that it was individual moments that had cost us the game. At that stage, I didn't feel there was too much worry. I think there was, and there probably still is after the 3, but especially after the first one, there's a sense of, okay, that's the high watermark now. That's where we need to be. You hope, you assume, you look forward to your next chance, and you think, well, you Forest Green, Southend, and then the 2 bank holiday fixtures, you've got 4 chances to very much put it right quite quickly. So, no, after the Rochdale game, I think it was a sense of, it's a shame that we didn't have a moment. We didn't have a goal. It'd have been nice, even if we had lost, to have scored first or to have scored an equaliser, have a meaningful goal. But no, I think there was a sense that the occasion was a good one, and that actually we weren't too far away from a Rochdale team that seemed to think they never really got going. So there were positives to take, especially after that Rochdale game, albeit there were very clearly 2 poor moments that cost us the game before half time.
Yeah, I think I left the game that day actually thinking, it's only the first game of the season. Okay, we've lost 3-0, but Rochdale are going to probably be up there or thereabouts at the end of the season. And we wished their fans luck, and they wished us luck, as we passed each other coming out the ground. So, I have to agree on that one. Then we go on to Forest Green Rovers, and I must admit, I was a little bit more hopeful. They had drawn the first game of the season 3-3. I thought, well, okay, they're conceding goals, and scoring goals. I thought we could probably get something out of this game. Wasn't to be. David, a 4-0 defeat. How did you feel it went?
Yeah, I was on the radio for this fixture, and I did my homework. I looked and I thought, wow, there's levels to this. The quality that Forest Green have. Liam Sercombe, Carl McAllister, Christian Deutsch, all playing in League One or around League Two last year. Now playing in the National League, playing against Boston. I just think it's wild. We also mentioned on the radio that Ipswich have gone up since 2021 when they were both in the same division, Forest Green and Ipswich, and Forest Green had come down and played Boston. Ipswich were now playing Liverpool in the Premier League on that day at the exact same time. It was the quality of their players. It just opened my eyes to it a bit more of what we're in for. If Rochdale was sort of a free hit, like we say, it was positive. It was a positive day. This was more of, okay, this is what we're in for. I like we've said before, like lots of people are saying on social media at the moment, they will probably be up there, but it's just the fact of this is what we're going to have to compete with. And if we keep playing like we are and making these silly individual errors, it's going to be a long season for us.
Steaders?
Just a quick question actually to Christian. Fixtures wise, we usually get one on a Tuesday after a Saturday, and that didn't happen this time for some strange reason. Usually we get a Saturday and then a Tuesday, like a follow up game very quickly. I wonder if that gap there didn't help us as much as probably we thought it would do, because sometimes like a bit of momentum in there as well. So I wonder if that made much of a difference being back-to-back Saturdays. But the game itself, actually, I thought we was in the game until they scored. But I think it was 15 minutes, weren't it, when they first scored? I think the first one went in, I think, roughly about a quarter of an hour on the mark. I thought we played quite well up to that point, to be honest with you. And then, strangely enough, after their second goal as well, at 2-0, we score again before half-time and make it 2-1. It's game on. And we had that little period there, didn't we, just at the back end of that first half, where we looked like the most threatening out of probably all three games, to be honest with you, that we might get something. And I just felt that they looked at, I know, and obviously they kept a clean sheet eventually in the game, but I felt that they had some mistakes in that back line at some points as well, that they were giving the ball up probably easier than any of the other two teams that we played. So it just didn't come, did it? And like I say, momentum's everything. And of course, then they go and score as well, don't they, just before half time, which kills us and takes that and makes that half time talk a lot easier for themselves. So yeah, it wasn't an easy afternoon on the eye, was it? We've learnt a lot over these last three games, that's for sure. We can't say we're not learning, because we're definitely doing that, and that's just replacing us from scoring goals, unfortunately.
Of course. And Christian, what did you make of the game, the Forest Green game?
I think firstly you mentioned that Tuesday night missing, and I firstly thought the season would have started on the 3rd of August. We had the same dates 5 seasons ago, the last year at York Street, and we started on the 3rd. I assumed we'd be starting on the 3rd. And you'd have then had time probably for 2 midweeks before, and then you'd have had a week off leading into the bank holiday. It does seem odd to play the Tuesday when you're then playing Saturday, Monday, as we are doing. But as it was, the other thing, of course, on that is that you get the chance to bounce back quite quickly. There were times when you'd play Saturday, Tuesday. So by 10 days into the season, you've played 4 games. You'd know quite quickly where you were, for good or for otherwise. But actually, you got quite a lot of chances to get yourselves going fairly quickly, whereas it's been a bit of a drawn-out process for us. I felt, and I think we've all kind of said without saying it now, that the Forest Green performance, while it was the worst score, was probably the best Boston performance of the 3. I felt that there were periods of the game you could take heart from. I agree at 2-0, any level of football, the next goal at 2-0 is going to be massive. But I felt very much that there were 2 different games to be played there. And if Boston had scored that 3rd goal, there was an opportunity, even if you'd have huffed and puffed and Forest Green had scored late and won 3-1, you could have built a real narrative that there was progression from one game to the next. Again, individual mistakes let Boston down in the Forest Green game, but I did feel that it was a progression on from Rochdale. And I actually felt that Forest Green were a cut above what we faced against Rochdale as well, especially going forward. I think the quality that you touched on in that Forest Green team is completely different. Steve Cottrell as a manager is one of the best in the league, that's for sure. I felt that going from Rochdale, which Boston were clearly second best in, but having cost themselves with errors, really, I did feel, as much as the result got worse, that actually the Forest Green performance was a bit of progress. And then Southend, which we'll come on to. But no, I did feel that there was a game there that there was some heart to take from. I thought Forest Green were a very good side. But again, you can't commit these errors. You couldn't have done it in the National League North. You certainly can't do it now. not so early on in games. I mean, we'd escaped with the scare in the second minute when Cam had given that pass away straight through Roberts, and Deutsch had the header at the back post. And, you know, it's an easy game from the stands, isn't it? But early errors in all three games have cost Boston really the chance at a result. But yeah, I thought Forest Green was a reasonable showing, stepping on from Rochdale, albeit we got beat 4-0 at home.
Of course, and then we went on to last night, and I think, you know, obviously the last game of, I mean, all games are going to be tough, but probably the last game of the real big tough fixtures away at Roots Hall, and unfortunately I couldn't get there, but I did manage to catch the game on the television, and let's just say the commentators were very biased against Boston United. I think it was BBC Radio Essex, and I think one of them was in the second half. He said, "Oh, Boston came out first, and that's the first time they've been first in anything this game." And just one of the things that that they were like, and things like, "Oh, they shouldn't be coming out from the back because they're not getting anywhere, and they're just turning around and going back again." And yeah, they were quite well, not very nice towards Boston, but I mean, obviously you guys all went to the game, and Stedders, how did you feel, you know, being there at the game? How did it go?
Oh, just a shout out to Roots Hall and actually all its supporters, because they're actually a very friendly club. If you look back on all the social media posts recently, in the last 12 hours or 24 hours, they've been very, very friendly towards us, saying how much of a good club we are, how good the following was, how loud we were. Really, really complimentary. So kudos to them. It was a lovely old stadium. It made a good bit of racket, even though there weren't many of us there. We certainly sounded all right. But yeah, the game itself again, early sucker punch goal again, weren't it? Dubious decision on Zach Mills. Some saying he fouled, some said it fell over. I've had a few looks back on it. I put the juries out on that, isn't it? But it's an early goal conceded again after 1 minute and 20 seconds, isn't it? And you're directly on the back foot again, aren't you? Again, huffed and puffed, and tried to make a few things happen, but very much a game on the back foot. They played out from the back really well from goal kicks, left to right. They had it sussed out. They passed it quicker than what we could make up the ground for from our front guys who did work hard, but it's just such a tough job for them guys up there. Yeah, just a bit of a struggle at the minute, isn't it, to see the best formation, maybe even the best 11 at the minute, when, you know, and sometimes that's what pre-season's for, but I just feel as though we're just struggling to find our best 11 at the minute, and to find our best defensive line especially, because that's where it seems to be the issue of us conceding goals. And then obviously the other end of the pitch as well, finding our best front two or front line partnership is just proving to be a bit of a sticking point, really, isn't it? But yeah, enjoyable experience. 2-0. It could have been more for them, couldn't it? Of course it could, but yeah, no, overall it was a really nice away night, actually, under the lights at Roots Hall. And that'll be a good test when they come back down to us at JCS, that's for sure.
David, how did you find it?
Yeah, like Tom said, I sort of enjoyed everything apart from the result. You know, we tried to play a bit more direct. Adam Rodger and Hazel put a bit more height up front. Obviously, tried to match Waldron and Cardwell. Like I say, sucker punching. It's just conceding. We've got to be stronger in the first 15 minutes of the game, because there's no hope. It just it just wipes away everything. It takes us a few minutes to get back in the game and get our heads back into gear. And what's going to happen? You can't be conceding goals that early into games. And like I say, it's up to the referee what he picks. Like I say, I've watched it back. I can't really tell really from the angle of the camera how and if it is a foul or not. But like you say, you go 1-0 down within 80 seconds. I just got used to my surroundings, and then the ball was in the back of the net, so it was a bit of a blow. Then, like you say, like Tom said, sorry, they piled a lot of pressure on us. They look so organised, and they're so free flowing, playing out from the back. You know, I know Cameron Gregory's not good with his feet really, and kicking a lot. I know it's not really his forte, but if that's what Kulvaus wants to do, we definitely see that he's going to keep playing the way he wants to play, and he'll stand by that. and he'll probably die by that post from us playing back out from the back. So there's no point screaming and moaning about it in the stands, because we're only going to play one way whilst he's in charge. And you just got to believe in what they do and keep the faith. And even though it was 2-0 loss, did get a bit outclassed by their players. Like you say, one of the favourites to win the title, actually, after their financial trouble. You saw that last night with a big Tuesday night attendance of about 7,000. But like I said previously, just roll on Saturday and you just hope that we can get something out of a Tamworth game.
Of course. And Christian, one thing that the last few years, especially in the National League North, that everyone's been talking about is the way the referees have been. But I mean, so far, I would say in the first 3 games that I've seen in the National League, the standard, I feel, has risen. I think the referees aren't as bad as they were in the National League. Would you agree with that one?
Yeah, I would say that you would hope that there is a step up as you go up a level. Obviously, the play increases in its quality, in its pace as well. So you would expect officials to do the same. And I've had very little cause to really notice any of the officials the first 3 games, and I tend to think that's a pretty good indication that they're doing a good job. They're still the 5th tier. You know, they're not going to be perfect. No one's really happy with the Premier League refereeing, but yeah, I think after 3 games, albeit, and it might be different when Boston do get into a game that is really closely contested, to be honest with you, you know, where the last 10 minutes it is level or there's 1 goal in it and you're looking for support with stoppage time, or you're expecting a late penalty, etc. You know, the referees in the 3 Boston games haven't really been put in those positions yet. But yeah, I'd agree that the standard has been high and the games have been allowed generally to flow. And I've certainly had no complaints. And the only decision really is that first goal last night. Culverhouse wasn't getting drawn into blaming the referee or even suggesting it was maybe a foul. So whether that's him taking a diplomatic approach, I don't know, but it seems to have been a bit of a flash in the pan, that one as well.
Yeah, have to agree. We've had a listener and watcher, Andy, get in touch with us because at the moment as well with the team, there's a bit sort of controversy what team should start and which players should start for Boston this season. He's actually gone through and sent me what he feels is his best first 11. I just want to see what you guys think of that as well. So he's done it as a 3-4-3, a formation. So he's got Gregory in goal. Along the back, he's got Cameron Green, Mitch Roberts in the middle, and then Zach Mills. In midfield, he's got Sam Osborne, Dan Mooney, Frankie Maguire, and Dylan Hill. With up front, Tony Weston, Pemi Adejiro, you could probably say that better, Christian, and Jacob Hazel. David, what do you think? That's a good lineup, or would you make changes to that one?
Yeah, you look at it and something stands out is that they're the players that haven't been getting minutes this so far. One critique of the management team is, for me personally, is we wait too long to include these substitutions to try and change the game. It seems like he's got an agenda that a player must complete 60 minutes on the pitch before he changes anything. Like I say, you don't want to be too rash and change the game too early, because then that becomes then the opposition manager can counter that. But like I say, it's just inclusions of players that haven't really played. And like I say, when Dylan Hill comes on, I know he's a fan favourite. He just runs his socks off, to be honest. I think that's what people want to see. They just want to see that the players care. And we saw that last night, to be fair, at the end of the game when they all came over to us. I know Cameron Green was speaking to a few of us at the end, really putting the point home that they appreciate our support. And, you know, we've just got to be united together and stand as one, really, in this difficult time. But going back to our lineup, it's an interesting way to set up. You've got Green at the back, which likes to go forward a lot. Like, you wouldn't even really know that he's a defender, to be honest. That often that he's going up and down the pitch. yeah, give it a go. Honestly, if Culverhouse know his best 11, which it looks like it doesn't at the moment, why not? It might work.
Yeah. Steaders, what do you think of that team?
Well, first of all, interested, no Captain Boswick in there at all in that back line, is there? So
No.
that wasn't mentioned. So I think the one player actually that it came on late last night, who's probably struggled to in these first three games to make any impact, Keaton Ward. And I actually think that he could play a pivotal part in these few games coming up. I wonder if they're going to try and utilise him a little bit more in these games coming up. I feel as though we're just missing that player, that attacking midfielder, and that creativity to make the chances as much as it is to score the goals. So for me, I'll probably include Keaton Ward into Saturday's team coming up. And Boswick's the interesting one, isn't it? Because obviously he's injured at the minute, so we don't know if he's going to be able to shake that off for Saturday as well. So if he doesn't come back in, I thought Tom Leake had a pretty decent game yesterday, to be honest with you. I thought he played quite well. So I'll probably stick with him still. Yeah, I mean, this is it. Football's such a game of opinions and choices and formations. We could all sit here and name a different 11 each, couldn't we? It's finding the 11 that's going to work for the way that the manager wants to play. That is the ultimate, isn't it? Finding the way that we're going to get and try and get some goals and get some confidence back into the side. That's what we ultimately want from Saturday, isn't it? But yeah, interesting. And of course, if there's any other listeners out there who've got different opinions on the 11s, send them in, Damo. Get them in. Let's see what they've got to say.
Yep. Absolutely, yes. Get them in. Tell us what you think as well. And Christian, I mean, what do you think of that? And obviously, you've been speaking to Ian and some of the other members of staff. Do you think that they are looking at other players to bring in before the transfer deadline? Do you think there will be new people coming in?
Firstly, on the team that you read out there, just to check, there wasn't any Jordan Richards in there, was there?
There wasn't. No, there wasn't.
It's wrong then. It's as simple as that. There's no Jordan Richards. I'm sorry. I'm sorry to your listener. It could be 10 out of 11, but there's no Jordan Richards, so it's wrong.
Right.
I think in a serious point, the midfield is a question that needs answering. Obviously, the structure and the way that we've looked to build attacks, to my eyes anyway, has largely been through width. And there have been occasions, especially last night, where I felt that the midfield ground was sort of conceded at times, really. After Southend broke through that high press, there were 3 or 4 occasions in the first half that I can think of where progression kind of through the centre circle was fairly easy for them. And that's not a criticism of the players that were there. They seem to very much be sticking to the jobs they've been asked to do. But yeah, no, I think Jordan Richards is such an asset. I really do. Martin Woods obviously missed out first week and has then come straight back in. He's now got the armband. So I can't really see either of them two being disrupted. But if you've lost 3 games, there's a chance to improve on all 3, isn't there? It's very difficult to settle on a team when you're losing. Equally, you can lose 3 and 4-0 at home, and I'm sure that there is a case for any of the individuals to kind of be stood down and someone else brought in, but it's just not feasible. You know, you couldn't have turned up last Saturday and gone, well, we'll name a completely different 11. It's not going to happen. So there's always that balance. You can't tear it all down and build it all again. It's impossible. You've wasted pre-season. And obviously you've got players that are signed on a year's contract, you know, fans, supporters, even perhaps the management. They've obviously got a bit more that they can do about it. But if there's a player you don't feel that's performing too well, especially as a supporter, you've of course got your right to voice that and to have that opinion. But I think you do just need to be careful that actually you are tied to these players for the next year. And it is these players that are going to have to get you out of the mess. Culverhouse likes a small squad. We saw that last year, that the few additions that were made, they were very good additions. I think that was understated, to be honest. Jay Rowe came in. Sam Smart, Deji Satona, Jacob Hazel came in, had a huge impact over Christmas. Transformed us really from, we were looking at kind of 8th, 9th, 10th, needing to put a bit of a run together. Suddenly have a good Christmas in January. Especially Hazel in that January, February time when Knowles and Mooney weren't firing was huge. So there weren't many additions. Craig Elliott was often criticised for making plentiful additions, regular ones. Boston filled gaps where they needed to. Aaron Chapman, you know, how difficult is it to find a goalkeeper mid-season? You lose Cam, you bring Aaron Chapman in, and then as soon as Cam's back fit, they make the decision that they don't need to have the wage expenditure. And, he kept 5 clean sheets, or 4 clean sheets, sorry, and then made some excellent saves in the first half of that playoff final. So, again, I think Ian, Paul, Baz, they've earned the right to have the go very clearly. They will be patient. I know there was talk in the programme notes last week that there was a player that had effectively agreed but hadn't actually signed the paperwork,
right.
and then saw the Rochdale result and decided against. In terms of the defence as well, we've never got a chance to look at Kieran Coates. There's been this unfortunate eye injury that's kept him completely out of anything. And as much as you've got 2 very, very quality right backs for this level in Jay Rowe and Zach Mills, one's playing centre half, there'd have presumably been a space for Coates in there. So how much he was integral to plans, we've never seen. I've seen Kieran Coates play maybe 1 or 2 games of football. Not many at Boston have seen any more than that, unfortunately. And it seems a bit of an open-ended one as to when he'll come back. I certainly won't want to be messing about with an eye injury, heads, eyes, that sort of thing. They're very much not worth pushing. And they're specialists, aren't they? But yeah, in terms of additions, I think it's difficult. You're going to need the right sort of character now. The start doesn't help in that you feel that you maybe need to make additions sooner. But it's more difficult to attract players to a team that's losing games of football. If we were top of the National League after 3 games, I should think whoever the mystery players that didn't want to come would have made a very different decision. So maybe it's good that you discover this about a character before you committed to them. But yeah, it's going to be difficult. I've certainly not heard anything. I'd assume if they were trying to bring one player in, that there's still the thought of bringing a defensive player in, given that's what seems to have been what they were going for. But no, it'll be steady. They'll be patient. The budget is finite and they're not going to waste it.
No, and I'm sure if they do need a player, Chelsea have got 1 or 2 going spare, haven't they? Out their 42 squad that they've got. So we've got, obviously, looking ahead to the weekend, and Tamworth at home on Saturday, and then York away on Bank Holiday Monday. And Steaders, how do you think these 2 games are going to go now? Obviously, Boston rooted to the bottom of the National League at the moment. Can you see us picking up some points and goals?
I sincerely hope so, Damo. Yeah, let's hope so. I also hope that the fans don't hit that panic button far too quickly, because we know this management team, as Christian rightly said, they won't do. So us as fans have just got to be just as patient as the management team have. I've got a feeling it will come. Like I say, I think there's enough signs, I think, in that Forest Green performance just during that little period there for me to go with these next 2 games. I'm hoping that we can show up on Saturday. Hoping the crowd can show up on Saturday, because again, David alluded to it, just how much difference the crowd makes as well. So that's going to be a big factor on the Saturday coming, isn't it? Tamworth aren't no mugs though. We know that they finished way ahead of us last season, didn't they? And it's not going to be as easy as everybody makes it out to be. But we're all fingers crossed that our season can get going on Saturday and get them points needed. Because at the minute, there's 4 other teams on no points, or 5, and a win can take you straight out of that relegation zone and straight up into a bit better looking, albeit we need to score quite a few goals.
Of course. David?
Yeah, every game is difficult in this division. And we got Tamworth, who we know well for their interesting style of play, to be fair. But caused us problems last season. It could probably do it again this one. So yeah, we just have to sort of stand up to it. Like you say, get loads of people, get the crowd up, and hopefully we can stand up to it. I know the Bank Holiday away day to York will probably be well received, I'm predicting. I always enjoy a trip down there, even though I've got bad memories of it, and we all probably do as well. But yeah, it's these people earmarking these games as important games. They're the same game as everybody else. We just put the 11 out there to try and get the points. If they don't get the points, move on to the next one. You've just got to stick by the players, stick by the management team, and they will get it right, as they showed last season.
Of course. And Christian, how do you think the Tamworth game and then York will go?
I think a real word of caution about Tamworth, to be honest with you. Firstly, as we say, they obviously came up with Boston. They've only picked up 1 point so far, but you look at those games, they led Sutton at home for a long time on the opening day. Sutton relegated from League Two last year, who then beat Altrincham 5-0 at the weekend. So clearly no mugs. Tamworth more than capable of looking after them, albeit they only ended up with a point. They then went to York and lost out to a penalty and then a goal on the counter-attack. Very much in that game, bit of a scrappy one. And then they lost 1-0 at home to Hartlepool last night late on. I'd encourage anyone to look at the scramble Tamworth had trying to rescue a point in the last minute. That is a team that's been able to stay in all 3 games so far, all the way. Until the York scored that second goal, that's the only game where Tamworth haven't been in it all the way through. And hand on heart, we can't say the same about Boston. So I would suggest that on the balance so far, and Tamworth have played some good sides, they've perhaps settled a little better than Boston have. So I'd be really wary. At the same time, it's at home. I think there's hope. There's room to be optimistic there. I think you have to approach it with a fresh attitude, and I think there is a feeling that this is a little bit less of a step up than what we've had to try and bridge so far. So it's an opportunity, isn't it? And it would be sod's law that it finishes 0-0 and both sides are still waiting for that first win. But we saw Yeovil, they wait to Braintree, the 2 teams that had come up from the south, to get their win, to get themselves going. One of Boston and Tamworth on Saturday probably does the same. It's same Tamworth. It's 1-0, 0-0. That's what you're going to get. To be honest with you, a couple of first half errors and you're 2-0 down. Difficult afternoon again. And Boston can't afford to think like that. I think fans think like that. Players can't afford to think like that. But equally, I don't think anyone can talk Tamworth down too much. And equally, if Boston do win and do well, there can't be a sense of, they've only beaten Tamworth. This is a good side, a really good side. And if Boston do get a good result, and more importantly, if the performance looks like another step up, I think it has to be taken on its merits that you've got it against a proper National League side. And then York's an opportunity, isn't it? How many of these away games could have been an opportunity to have a big day out? I know we've been to York recently, but speaking more generally, to visit new places, it's an underdog story, isn't it? The Southend game, especially the way it played out, but even going down there, it was almost an FA Cup feel of see what we can get from this. York are going to be favourites at home. They've had a strong start. They've not conceded in the 2 home games, and they drew 1-1 at Southend on the opening day, so they were clearly able to match them. We'll see how we go. Boston need to start scoring some goals, and they need to get a point on the board quick, because they will be cut adrift. For now, there's 4 teams in the same predicament, and come the end of the weekend, you could be pretty much anywhere in the league.
Definitely. Got to agree with you there. And keeping fingers and toes and everything crossed for the 2 games this coming weekend. Christian, thank you very much for joining us on this episode. Where can people find you if they want to have a look at some of your stats?
Yeah, so we're on Twitter at Boston UTD, so the shortened United, Boston United Stats. I'm usually about if people want to have a chat on a match day as well. Any stats questions on the history of the club. I'm very privileged to have been given a lot of programs and artifacts and photographs over time. So if people want to know about relatives or about games, players that they remember, I really enjoy doing that side of things as well. It's been quite nice to kind of reacquaint people with some memories and some photos that they've lost. So please, the DMs are always open, and I'm always happy to talk about Boston United, that's for sure.
That's brilliant. Thank you very much. And of course, you can find us on Up the Pilgrims on Spotify, Amazon Music and Apple Music. Or if you prefer to watch us, then we are on YouTube. Just search for Up the Pilgrims and you will find us on all the available apps. Hit the subscribe button and you won't miss another episode. David Stedders, thank you very much once again. And we will be back very soon. Let's hope Boston can get the first goals and the first points this weekend. And we will catch you all very soon on another episode of Up the Pilgrims.